The sound of Zara Hale's body hitting the marble floor echoed through the luxury mall like a gunshot. For a split second, the world froze. Shoppers clutching glossy bags went silent. A child stopped crying mid-wail. The string lights draped across the glass ceiling flickered softly above her as Zara lay stunned, pain exploding through her elbow and shoulder. Before the story continues, kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel, like the video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the conclusion of this story and more intense stories like this. Look at you, a man sneered above her. Still falling apart. Guess some things never change. Ethan Cross stood over her, his mouth curled in disgust, his hand still half raised from the shove. His designer coat hung perfectly on his shoulders, his expensive watch gleaming under the lights. He looked every bit like a man who had never lost anything in his life. Zara sucked in a sharp breath, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. Her bodyguards moved instantly, one stepping in front of her, the other crouching down. "Madam, don't move," Miko said urgently. "Get your hands off me," Ethan barked, shoving Miko's shoulder. "This is between me and her." Several gasps rippled through the crowd. Zara pushed herself up slowly, ignoring the throbbing pain in her arm. She met Ethan's eyes, and for a heartbeat, the mall disappeared. She was no longer standing on polished marble in a city of wealth and lights. She was 22 again, hungry, pregnant, begging. "You left me," she said quietly. Ethan laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Here we go again. Always the victim. You're needy, Zara. Exhausting. You thought getting pregnant would trap me." A woman clinging to Ethan's arm scoffed loudly. "Is this her? The ex? Wow, I expected someone better." The words sliced deeper than the shove. Zara's chest tightened, memories crashing into her without mercy. Empty cupboards, the eviction notice, the night she collapsed alone on a bathroom floor, blood soaking through her clothes as the life inside her slipped away. "I lost the baby," Zara said, her voice trembling despite her effort. "Because you disappeared. Because I starved. Because I was alone." Ethan rolled his eyes. "That's not my problem. You should have figured your life out instead of clinging to me." Something inside Zara cracked. Before she could speak again, Ethan shoved her a second time. That was when security rushed in. Strong hands grabbed Ethan's arms, forcing him back as voices rose all around them. Phones were already out, recording. A security supervisor hurried forward, his face pale as he looked from Zara on the floor to Ethan struggling in their grip. "Sir, you assaulted her," the supervisor said. "We have it on camera." "Bullshit," Ethan snapped. "She provoked me." Zara's phone vibrated in her trembling hand. She stared at the screen for a second before answering. "I fell," she said softly. There was a pause on the other end. Too quiet. Then a man's voice came through, low, controlled, frighteningly calm. "Are you hurt?" "My arm," Zara whispered. "But I'm standing." Another pause. She could almost feel him breathing. "Stay where you are," he said. "I'm coming." The call ended. Ethan scoffed when he saw her lower the phone. "Calling another man to save you? Classic. Let me guess. Some poor idiot you convinced to play hero." Zara said nothing. She didn't need to. Outside the mall, black vehicles began to pull up one by one. Inside, Zara stood silently as security questioned witnesses. Her arm ached, her heart pounded, but her face remained composed. Years ago, she would have been shaking, apologizing, shrinking. Not anymore. Ethan continued to rant, pacing as much as the guards allowed. "You think this matters? You think you matter? You were nothing then, and you're nothing now." The automatic doors slid open. The air changed. A man stepped inside, tall and immaculately dressed in black, his presence commanding without effort. His hair was neatly styled, his expression unreadable. Behind him, 6 men followed, moving with the precision of trained soldiers. The mall fell into stunned silence. Han Jaiwan's gaze swept the room once, cold, assessing, before locking on Zara. Everything else ceased to exist. He crossed the distance between them in seconds, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the security guards who instinctively stepped aside. He stopped in front of her, and knelt without hesitation. "Let me see," he said gently, his hands warm as he examined her arm. "I'm okay," Zara said, her voice finally breaking. "I just didn't expect to see him." Anjiwun's Zhao. He pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, lingering there just long enough for her to steady herself against him. Then he stood and turned. "Which one?" he asked calmly. Every finger pointed to Ethan. Ethan's confidence wavered for the first time. "Who the hell are you?" Han Jiwen approached him slowly, his steps measured, his expression unchanged. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried. "You push my wife?" Ethan laughed nervously. "Your wife? You expect me to believe." Han Jiwen grabbed Ethan by the collar and slammed him into the marble wall, so hard the sound echoed through the mall. Gasps erupted. Someone screamed. Ethan choked, his feet barely touching the ground as Han Jiwen leaned in close. "Listen carefully," Han Jiwen said, his voice low and lethal. "Because this is the last moment of your life where you are allowed to misunderstand your position." Ethan's eyes widened in terror. Han Jiwen tightened his grip. "You don't touch her," he continued. "You don't speak to her. You don't even think about her. And everything you are about to lose, you earned." Security froze, unsure whether to intervene. The supervisor swallowed hard. "Sir, we should call the police." Han Jiwen didn't even look at him. "No." The word carried weight. Final. Absolute. The supervisor hesitated, then nodded. Ethan's breathing turned frantic. "Wait. Please, I didn't know she was married." "I swear. If I'd known." Han Jiwen released him suddenly, letting him collapse to the floor. "Oh," he said coldly. "That makes it worse." Zara watched from a distance, her heart racing, not with fear but with something else. Relief. For the first time in years, the man who broke her was the one on the ground. And this was only the beginning. Han Jiwen straightened slowly, adjusting his cuffs as if he hadn't just crushed a man's world in his fist. Ethan coughed on the floor, clutching his throat, his face red and damp with sweat. The crowd had backed away now, forming a wide, fearful circle, phones still raised but hands shaking. Zara took a hesitant step forward. "Jiwen." He turned immediately, the sharpness in his eyes dissolving the second he looked at her. "I'm here." She swallowed. "Please don't kill him. Not for me." A flicker passed through his expression, something dark, then something respectful. He nodded once. "I won't do anything you don't want." Ethan stared up at them, disbelief etched into his face. "You," he rasped. "You're letting her decide now." Han Jiwen looked down at him as one might look at something already finished. "You forfeited your right to dignity the moment you touched her." Security finally found the courage to speak again. "Sir, mall protocol. Your cameras recorded everything." Han Jiwen interrupted calmly. "Make copies. Secure them. No edits." The supervisor hesitated. "And the police?" Han Jiwen met his gaze for the first time. His eyes were steady, unblinking. "I will handle it." The man nodded, sweat beading at his temples. Outside, the black vehicles waited with engines idling. Han Jiwen gestured, and two of his men stepped forward, lifting Ethan effortlessly. No, wait," Ethan stammered. "Zara, please. You don't have to do this. We could talk. You always like talking things through." Zara stopped walking. She turned slowly, her injured arm cradled against her body. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "There was a time," she said softly, "when I begged you to talk. Why beg you to stay? You didn't listen then." She stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could see the faint tremor in her hands. "I don't owe you another word." They dragged him toward the exit, his protests fading into panicked silence. Han Jiwen turned back to Zara. "We're going home." She nodded, exhaustion crashing over her now that the adrenaline was draining. As they walked out together, whispers followed them like shadows. Inside the car, the silence was thick. Zara stared out the window as the city lights blurred past, her reflection staring back at her. Older, stronger, but still carrying ghosts. "I thought I was past it," she said suddenly. Seeing him, it felt like being 22 again. Like nothing I built mattered. Han Jiwen reached for her uninjured hand, lacing their fingers together. It mattered. It matters. Trauma doesn't erase progress. It just reminds you where you started. She let out a shaky breath. He made me feel small. Anjiwun's Zhao Diktanat. He doesn't get to define you. Not anymore. Back at the penthouse, the staff rushed to help, but Han Jiwen waved them away. He guided Zara to the couch himself, kneeling in front of her with a first aid kit. "You're bleeding," he murmured. "It doesn't hurt that much." He glanced up at her, one eyebrow lifting. "You're terrible at lying." Despite everything, she let out a small laugh. It dissolved quickly into tears. "I hated him," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But I also hated myself for still being affected by him." Han Jiwen gently cleaned the scrape on her elbow. Surviving something doesn't mean it never hurt. It means you lived through it. She watched his hands, so careful, so steady. "What are you going to do to him?" He paused, considering. Everything he's been hiding will surface. Every woman he lied to. Every account he drained. Every deal he cheated. That sounds final. It is. She searched his face. And if he apologizes? If he says he's sorry? Han Jiwen met her eyes. Then he'll be sorry in public. That night, Zara barely slept. When morning came, her phone was already buzzing nonstop. Messages. Missed calls. Notifications stacked on notifications. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice groggy. Han Jiwen leaned against the doorway, coffee in hand. The footage leaked. She sat up. "Leaked. Released," he corrected calmly. "Exactly as recorded." She scrolled, her heart pounding. The video showed Ethan shoving her. The fall. Security intervening. His shouting. The comments were relentless. "Abuser. Monster. Jail him." Another link followed, a detailed thread outlining Ethan's financial history. Fraudulent investments. Multiple women with similar stories. Screenshots. Bank records. Zara's breath caught. "This is everything." "It's the truth," Han Jiwen said. "Truth just moves faster when you remove obstacles." Her phone rang again. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Zara," a man's voice said stiffly. "This is Richard Cross, Ethan's father." Han Jiwen's eyes sharpened. "I think," Richard continued, "we should talk. Privately." Han Jiwen took the phone from Zara. "You have 5 minutes." Richard's voice hardened. "Your interference is destroying my son's life." Han Jiwen's tone didn't change. "Your son destroyed his own life. I'm just turning on the lights." There was a pause. "What do you want?" Han Jiwen glanced at Zara. She met his gaze and nodded slightly. "Accountability," he said. "Restitution. A public admission. And distance. Permanent. And if we refuse?" Anjivon smiled faintly. "Then I continue." The line went dead. Zara exhaled slowly. That was terrifying. Han Jiwen turned to her. "I won't make decisions for you. If you want this to stop." "No," she said quickly. "I don't want it to stop. I just don't want it to consume me." "It won't," he promised. "We decide when it ends." Later that evening, Zara sat alone on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the city. Her phone buzzed again, this time a notification she hadn't expected. A public apology video. Ethan's face filled the screen. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the smirk. "I take full responsibility," he said, voice shaking. "For my actions, my abuse, my lies. I hurt Zara Hale and many others. I am ashamed." Zara watched without blinking. When the video ended, she felt empty. Not angry. Not satisfied. Just free. She stood, went inside, and found Han Jiwen waiting. "I want to build something," she said suddenly. "Something that helps women like I was before." His expression softened. "Then we'll build it." She smiled through tears. Together? Always. Outside, the city kept moving. Somewhere, a man's empire collapsed. And somewhere else, a woman finally stepped fully into her future. Zara didn't sleep much that night. When she closed her eyes, she saw the mall floor rushing up at her again. She heard Ethan's voice, sharp, dismissive, certain of his power. She felt the old fear crawl up her spine, the kind that told her to stay quiet, stay small, survive. By morning, she gave up pretending rest would come. She slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Han Jiwen, and padded into the kitchen. The city outside was still half asleep, washed in pale gray light. She wrapped her fingers around a mug of tea and leaned against the counter, breathing slowly. Her phone buzzed. Another message. Another woman. The name was unfamiliar, but the words weren't. I saw the video. That man did the same thing to me. He promised marriage, took my savings, then vanished. Zara's chest tightened. The messages kept coming. Dozens of them. Stories layered on top of stories. Women from different cities, different countries, all describing the same charming cruelty, the same slow erosion of trust and money and self-worth. She sank into a chair, reading until her tea went cold. Han Jaiwan found her there an hour later, phone clutched in her hands, eyes red. "You're awake early," he said gently. She looked up at him. He wasn't just my past. No, anhivon agreed quietly. He was a pattern. She handed him the phone. He scrolled, his jaw tightening with every message. "This is bigger than him," Zara said. "It's a system. Women fall through cracks because shame keeps them silent." He studied her carefully. "You're already thinking ahead. I don't want to just survive this," she said. "I want it to mean something." Han Jaiwan nodded once. "Then it will." The news cycle exploded by midday. Every major outlet ran the footage. Commentators dissected Ethan's apology frame by frame. His employer released a carefully worded statement, distancing themselves from him. His fiancée's family pulled their support overnight. Zara watched it all from the quiet of the penthouse, her emotions strangely muted. It felt like watching someone else's life unravel. Her phone rang again. This time, she answered without hesitation. "Zara," Richard Cross said, his voice strained. "We need to finalize terms." Han Jaiwan gestured for the speakerphone. "Speak," Han Jaiwan said calmly. Richard exhaled. "My son will make a full public admission. He will return all funds taken. He will seek professional help. And he will stay away from your wife." And Han Yvonne prompted. And Richard said through clenched teeth, "Our family will establish a restitution fund under Zara's direction." Zara straightened. "Under my direction?" "Yes," Richard replied. "We want this to end." Jara met Han Yvonne's gaze. He waited. "I don't want hush money," she said slowly. "I want transparency. Names. Records. Everything." There was a long pause. "That will ruin him completely," Richard said. Zara's voice was steady. "He ruined himself." Silence. "Agreed," Richard said at last. The call ended. Zara exhaled, her hands shaking now that it was over. Han Jaiwan moved toward her, but she stepped back gently. "I need a moment," she said. He nodded immediately. "Take all the time you need." She went into the spare room, closing the door behind her. The space was quiet, sunlit, empty. She sank onto the floor, back against the bed, and finally let herself cry. Not loud, not broken, just steady tears slipping down her cheeks. She cried for the woman she had been, for the child she never held, for the years she spent believing love had to hurt. When she emerged an hour later, her face was calm. "I know where I want to start," she said. Han Jaiwan looked up from his tablet. "Tell me." "A center," she said. "Not just money. Actual support. Housing. Training. Therapy. Somewhere safe." He smiled faintly. "I already have 3 locations in mind." She blinked. "You planned this." "I planned for your next step," he corrected. "Not the shape of it." That evening, they attended a private dinner hosted by one of Han Jaiwan's associates. Zara hesitated before agreeing, but Han Jaiwan squeezed her hand. "You don't have to perform," he murmured. "Just exist." The room fell quiet when they entered. Whispers followed, but Zara held her head high. She caught fragments of conversation. That's her, the woman from the video, but none of it pierced her anymore. A woman approached her midway through the night. Elegant, composed, eyes sharp. "I'm Lena Park," she said. "I run a legal advocacy group." Zara's heart skipped. "I've heard of you. I watched what happened to you," Lena continued. "And what you did afterward. If you build this center, I want to help." Zara smiled, genuine and warm. "I'd like that." Later, as they drove home, Zara rested her head against the window. "I was scared tonight," she admitted. "And Yvonne glanced to her." "Of what?" "Of being seen," she said. "But it wasn't as bad as I thought." "Because you're not hiding anymore," he said. She reached for his hand. Promise me something. Anything. If one day you go too far, if your world becomes something I can't stand beside, tell me the truth. He didn't hesitate. And if you ever feel like you're shrinking again, promise me you'll say something. She nodded. The next morning, Zara received the transfer notification. The number made her inhale sharply. 7 figures. She stared at it for a long moment, then locked her phone and set it down. This money doesn't belong to me, she said quietly. No, anhivo nagrev. It belongs to what you're about to build. They spent the day drafting plans, calling contacts, sketching visions across the dining table. Zara felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Tired, yes, but purposeful. That night, as they lay side by side, she whispered, "Do you ever regret this life?" Han Jaiwan considered the question. "I regret the things that made it necessary." She turned to face him. "And us?" His hand brushed her cheek. "Never." Outside, the city glowed on, unaware that something new was taking shape inside one woman's quiet resolve. The first location Zara chose surprised everyone. It wasn't the center of the city or tucked behind gleaming towers. It sat near the river, in a neighborhood most developers had written off years ago. The building was old, its brick exterior faded, but the structure was solid. Sunlight poured through wide windows, and when Zara stepped inside for the first time, she felt something settle in her chest. "This feels right," she said quietly. Han Jaiwan studied the space, already imagining the changes. It will be. The renovation began immediately. Walls came down. New ones went up. Rooms were reshaped into offices, counseling spaces, shared kitchens, dormitories. Zara visited almost every day, sometimes with Han Jaiwan, sometimes alone. The workers quickly learned to recognize her, not as someone distant or decorative, but as someone who asked questions, listened, remembered names. One afternoon, a young contractor hesitated before speaking. "Ma'am, can I ask why you're doing this?" Zara paused, then smiled gently. "Because someone should have done it for me." Word spread faster than she expected. Emails flooded in. Calls. Applications. Some women wrote long, detailed accounts of what they'd endured. Others sent only a single sentence. "I don't know where else to go." Zara read every one. Some nights, she cried quietly after Han Jaiwan fell asleep. Other nights, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with logistics and fear. What if she failed them? What if she wasn't strong enough to hold all of this? One evening, she finally voiced it. "I'm scared," she admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What if I open these doors and can't protect them?" "And you won't sit beside her. You don't have to be everything. You just have to start." She turned to him. "And if your enemies come for this? For me?" His expression hardened, but his voice stayed gentle. "Then they will learn very quickly where my lines are." She searched his face. "Promise me this won't become another battlefield." He met her gaze. "This is the one place I will never stain with blood." That promise mattered more than anything else he could have offered. The opening date was announced quietly at first. Zara didn't want spectacle. She wanted safety. Still, the press came. Cameras lined the street on the morning of the opening. Zara stood just inside the doorway, her hands clasped together, her heart pounding. She wore a simple cream dress, her hair pulled back, no jewelry except a thin chain at her neck. Han Jaiwan stood a step behind her, not looming, not leading. Present, but letting her take the front. When she stepped forward to speak, the noise faded. "I didn't plan to stand here," Zara began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I didn't plan to become a symbol of anything. I planned to disappear once. A long time ago." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I was abandoned when I needed help the most. And for years, I thought that was my fault. I thought silence was survival." She paused, inhaling. "It isn't. Silence is a prison." She looked out the faces watching her, some curious, some skeptical, some already crying. "This place exists so that no woman has to choose between dignity and safety. No one here will ask you what you did wrong. We will ask you what you need." When she finished, the applause wasn't loud. It was heavy, earned. The first resident arrived that same afternoon. Her name was Noor. She stood in the doorway, clutching a small bag, her eyes darting around like she expected someone to drag her back out. Zara approached her slowly. "You're safe here," Zara said softly. "You don't have to explain anything today." Noor's lip trembled. You're her. From the video." Zara nodded. "And you're welcome." Noor broke down then, sobbing into Zara's shoulder. Zara held her without flinching, without rushing her. In that moment, every bruise, every sleepless night, every memory felt like it had led here. That night, Zara and Han Jaiwan sat alone in the quiet building long after everyone had gone home. "You were incredible today," he said. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted. "I almost ran. But you didn't." "No," she said, "because I remembered how it felt when no one came." Her phone buzzed. An email. She hesitated before opening it. It was from Ethan. She read it once. Then again. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see what you've become. I'm sorry for everything." Zara stared at the words for a long time. Then she deleted the email. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No," she said calmly. "I don't want to give him even this." He nodded, approval flickering in his eyes. Weeks passed. The center filled. Staff settled into routines. Women laughed in the kitchen. Children's drawings appeared on the walls. Life, messy, loud, hopeful, took root. One evening, as Zara locked up, she paused in the hallway, listening to the sound of voices behind closed doors. She pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. "Anjivon notice it." "What is it?" She smiled, tears in her eyes. "This is the first place I've ever built that doesn't feel temporary." He took her hand. "Then it's home." Later that night, curled together on the couch, Zara whispered, "I don't feel broken anymore." Han Jaiwan kissed her hair. "You never were." Outside, the river reflected the city lights, flowing forward without looking back. And for the first time, neither did she. The sense of calm didn't last. It never did. 3 weeks after the center opened, Zara received a call just after midnight. The number was blocked. She almost ignored it, then something in her chest tightened. She answered. "Mrs. Hale," a man's voice said softly. Too softly. "You're doing impressive work." Zara sat up in bed. Han Chivong stood beside her, instantly alert. "Who is this?" she asked. "A concerned observer," the man replied. "Your new project is disruptive." Han Jaiwan reached for the phone, but Zara shook her head, putting it on speaker instead. "If you're calling to donate," she said evenly, "you can contact our office during business hours." A quiet chuckle. "I'm calling to advise you to slow down." Han Jaiwan's expression darkened. "That sounds like a threat." The line went silent for a beat. Then the voice returned, colder now. "It's a courtesy. Some men prefer women like you stay grateful, not influential." Zara felt fear flare, sharp and familiar, but she didn't let it take her voice. "I didn't ask for your permission," she said. Another pause. "No," the man agreed. "You didn't." The call ended. For a moment, the room was silent except for Zara's breathing. Han Jaiwan took the phone from her hand and set it down carefully. "Did you recognize the voice?" "No," she said, "but I recognize the intent." He nodded slowly. "I'll handle it." She turned to him, alarm cutting through her fatigue. "No, you promised." "I promised I wouldn't bring violence to your center," he said. "Not that I would ignore danger." She searched his face. "What does handling it mean to you?" "It means information first," he replied. "Always." The next day, security around the center quietly doubled. Zara noticed, but she didn't protest. Instead, she focused harder on the work, meetings, interviews, planning expansions. If fear wanted to take space, it would have to fight her for it. Noor began sleeping through the night. Another resident found a job. Small victories stacked up, fragile but real. Still, the feeling lingered. One afternoon, Zara returned to her car to find a note tucked under the windshield wiper. "Be careful what you teach women to expect." Her hand shook as she read it. That evening, she finally snapped. "I won't live like this," she said, pacing the penthouse, anger bleeding through her composure. "I won't shrink again. Not now." Han Chivong watched her carefully. "You're not shrinking. It feels like being hunted," she snapped, then immediately softened. "I am sorry. I know you're trying to protect me." He stepped closer. "Zara, listen to me. This isn't about you being weak. This is about you being effective. She stopped pacing. What does that mean? It means you disrupted something, he said, and systems pushed back when threatened. She folded her arms around herself. Then what do? He reached out, steadying her. We stand firm. Publicly. Quietly. Strategically. The next week, Zara did something unexpected. She went live. No announcement. No build-up. Just her. Seated in the common room of the center, sunlight spilling in behind her. I've been warned to stop, she said calmly into the camera. To stay quiet. To be grateful. Her hands were folded in her lap, her voice unwavering. I won't. The response was immediate. Support poured in. Donations spiked. Legal advocates offered protection. Volunteers signed up faster than the system could process them. Whoever had called her faded back into the shadows. That night, Han Jiwen watched her from across the room, something like awe in his eyes. You're braver than I am, he said quietly. She laughed softly. No, I'm just done being afraid. A month later, expansion plans were finalized. 2 new locations, one in another city, one overseas. Zara sat at the dining table, surrounded by papers, excitement buzzing through her veins. This is happening fast. Han Yvonne smiled faintly. You move fast. She hesitated, then said, There's something else. He looked up. What is it? I want to be transparent, she said. About your world. About where the funding comes from. I don't want this tied to fear. His expression stilled. Not angry, not offended. Thoughtful. You're asking me to step back, he said. I'm asking you to stand beside me, she replied. Not in front. Not behind. A long silence stretched between them. Then he nodded. Done. Relief flooded her face. Really, I didn't fall in love with you to own your future, he said quietly. I fell in love with you because you have one. That night, they lay together in silence, fingers intertwined. I used to think love was survival, Zara whispered. Now it feels like choice. Han Jiwen turned toward her. It is. Weeks later, as winter deepened, Zara stood in the center's kitchen, watching Noor teach another woman how to cook a simple meal. Laughter filled the room. She felt it then. Not relief, not pride, but something deeper. Belonging. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lena. We just want a case. Another woman got her assets back. Zara smiled, tears pricking her eyes. She typed back a single word. Good. That evening, as snow began to fall outside, Han Jiwen poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to her. To the women who refused to disappear, he said. Zara clinked her glass against his. And to the men who let them shine. They drank in comfortable silence, the city glowing around them, unaware that somewhere deep beneath its noise and danger, something unbreakable had already taken root. And Zara knew, with a quiet, unshakable certainty, that no matter what came next, she would face it standing. The backlash came disguised as opportunity. Zara was reviewing case files when the email arrived, an invitation to speak at an international summit on social reform. The language was polished, flattering, urgent. Flights covered, security assured. A chance, they said, to amplify her work on a global stage. Han Jiwen read it twice, his jaw tightening slightly. This came too easily. Zara leaned back in her chair. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe this is what momentum looks like. Momentum attracts predators, he replied. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Which is why I'm not going alone. The summit took place in a coastal city far from home, all glass towers and curated charm. Zara stood backstage, listening to applause ripple through the hall as the previous speaker finished. Her heart thudded, not from fear but anticipation. When she stepped into the light, the room went still. She spoke without notes. About silence. About systems that punished vulnerability. About power that thrived in the dark. Halfway through, she noticed movement near the back of the room. A man slipped into a seat, face partially shadowed, eyes locked on her with unsettling focus. She didn't break stride. After the speech, applause thundered. People surged forward, journalists, donors, advocates. Zara smiled, shook hands, answered questions. But the feeling stayed with her. Someone was watching. That night, the hotel corridor felt too quiet. Zara paused outside her room, keycard hovering. Han Jaiwen's voice came through the earpiece she wore discreetly. Wait. She froze. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, slow, deliberate. Security emerged moments later, escorting a man away. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. But as they passed Zara, he smiled. It was the same voice from the phone call weeks ago. She knew it without hearing a word. Back home, things shifted. An anonymous article surfaced, questioning Zara's credibility. Old photos circulated, cropped, miscontextualized. Whispers of impropriety. Accusations with no sources and plenty of reach. Zara stared at the screen, a familiar nausea creeping in. They're trying to rewrite me. Han Jaiwen stood behind her. They won't succeed. But people will doubt, she said. They always do. The board called an emergency meeting. Some members were nervous. Others defensive. One finally said what lingered unspoken. Your personal history makes you vulnerable. Zara stood. My history makes me dangerous to people like this, she replied evenly. If that frightens you, step aside. I won't. Silence followed. Then Noor, now volunteering full-time, spoke up from the back of the room. If you leave her, you leave us. Others nodded. One by one, voices rose. The board backed down. That night, Zara broke. Not publicly, not loudly. She sat on the bathroom floor, knees drawn to her chest, shaking as years of suppressed fear finally clawed its way out. Han Jaiwen joined her without a word, sitting on the cold tile, holding her as she cried. I'm tired, she whispered. I'm so tired of being strong. You don't have to be tonight, he murmured. I've got you. The threats escalated. A window at the center shattered overnight. No note, no message, just broken glass and intention. Zara insisted on showing up anyway. She swept the shards herself before staff arrived, her hands steady despite the cuts. This is ours, she said when Han Jaiwen tried to stop her. They don't get to scare me out of it. The investigation finally produced a name. Marcus Vadi, a financier with deep pockets and deeper secrets. A man whose empire depended on keeping women quiet, indebted, invisible. He's connected, Han Jaiwen warned. Untouchable in most circles. Zara met his gaze. Then we make new circles. She filed a lawsuit. It wasn't about money. It was about exposure. Vale responded with everything he had. Legal pressure, intimidation, smear campaigns. Sponsors wavered. Some walked away. Zara held press conferences anyway. Each time, her voice grew steadier. Each time, more women stepped forward. Stories poured out. Evidence stacked up. The weight of truth bent the narrative back into place. One night, as the city slept uneasily, Han Jaiwen received a call. Vale wanted to meet. Alone, the message said. Zara shook her head immediately. No, I won't go unprepared, Han Jaiwen replied. She grabbed his hand. This ends with us alive. Together. He smiled faintly. Always. The meeting took place in a private lounge overlooking the harbor. Vale was older than Zara expected. Calm. Polished. You're ruining lives, he said mildly. Zara stepped forward before Han Jaiwen could respond. Only the ones built on silence. Vale studied her. You think you're untouchable now? No, she said. I think I'm visible. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, perhaps. Or fear. You'll burn out, he said quietly. They always do. Zara leaned closer. Then you should be afraid of what's left when I don't. The trial date was set. The night before, Zara stood on the center's rooftop, city lights stretching endlessly around her. Han Jaiwen joined her, slipping his coat over her shoulders. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said, you've already changed things. She smiled, soft but resolute. Tomorrow, we change them louder. Below them, the city pulsed, unaware that by morning, something long protected by darkness would finally be dragged into the light. And Zara, once abandoned and unheard, stood ready to face it head-on. The courthouse buzzed with a tension that felt almost electric. Zara arrived early, dressed simply, her posture straight despite the weight pressing down on her chest. Reporters clustered near the steps, their voices overlapping, questions fired like darts. Ms. Hale, are you confident today? Do you fear retaliation? Is this about revenge? She didn't answer. She walked past them with her head high, Han Jiawen close, but not shielding her, just present. Inside, the air was colder, heavier, as though the building itself understood what was at stake. Marcus Vale arrived minutes later, flanked by lawyers in tailored suits. He didn't look at Zara at first. When he finally did, his gaze lingered too long, assessing dismissive. The trial began with procedure and formality, but beneath it all ran a current of something volatile. When the prosecution called its first witness, Zara felt her breath hitch. It was Noor. Noor's hands trembled as she took the stand. Zara watched from her seat, heart pounding, willing strength into her with every breath. "Take your time," the judge said gently. Noor swallowed. "I met Marcus Vale through a business arrangement. He offered support, protection, but nothing was free." Her voice wavered, then steadied. She spoke of manipulation disguised as generosity, of contracts she didn't understand until it was too late, of fear that kept her silent for years. As she spoke, Zara saw heads in the courtroom lower. Jaws tightened. Vale remained still, his expression carefully neutral. More witnesses followed. Each story was different, yet horrifyingly similar. A woman forced to sign away her company under threat of exposure. Another whose visa was held hostage. Another who disappeared for months after refusing his demands. The defense tried to undermine them, suggesting bitterness, regret, ambition gone wrong. Zara's hands curled into fists. When it was her turn, the room fell completely silent. Zara stood, every step toward the stand feeling like walking through water. She placed her hand on the rail, took the oath, and met the eyes of the judge. She didn't dramatize. She didn't embellish. She told the truth. "I was abandoned when I was most vulnerable," she said. "And men like Marcus Vale rely on that vulnerability. They look for cracks, for fear. They offer help, then turn into a leash." Vale leaned back in his chair, lips tightening. Zara continued, "This case isn't about me. It's about what happens when silence is profitable. I refuse to stay silent. That's my crime." The defense attorney rose quickly. "Ms. Hale, isn't it true that you've gained notoriety, funding, and influence since these accusations?" Zara didn't hesitate. "Yes. And isn't it possible this lawsuit is part of a personal brand?" She smiled faintly. "If telling the truth is branding, then perhaps the problem isn't me." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Vale's composure finally cracked when evidence was presented: emails, recordings, financial trails. Each one tightened the noose further. By the final day, even his lawyers looked strained. Outside, crowds gathered. Women held signs. Survivors stood shoulder to shoulder. The movement had outgrown Zara, and she felt both humbled and terrified by that truth. The verdict came late in the afternoon. Guilty, on all major counts. The word landed like thunder. Vale didn't shout, didn't rage. He simply closed his eyes, as if finally acknowledging something inevitable. Zara felt her knees weaken. Han Jiawen's hand found hers, steady and warm. Outside, the crowd erupted, not in celebration, but release. Tears flowed freely. Strangers embraced. A collective exhale echoed through the steps. Reporters pushed forward again, voices urgent. "What does this victory mean?" Zara stepped up to the microphones, her voice shaking only once before steadying. "It means silence isn't safer anymore," she said. "And it never should have been." That night, exhaustion finally claimed her. She slept for nearly 12 hours straight, dreamless and deep. When she woke, sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and forgiving. Han Jiawen sat nearby, watching her with quiet relief. "It's over," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "It's different." She smiled. "I'll take that." The weeks that followed felt surreal. Legislation was proposed. Investigations opened. Other powerful men scrambled, distancing themselves from shadows they'd once trusted. The center received more applications than ever. Expansion became not just possible, but necessary. One evening, Zara stood in the common room watching new arrivals settle in. A young woman clutched her child, eyes wide with fear and hope intertwined. Zara approached her slowly. "You're safe here." The woman nodded, tears spilling over. "I heard about you." Zara smiled softly. "Then you heard wrong. This place isn't about me." Later that night, standing on the balcony overlooking the city, Zara leaned into Han Jaiwan's chest. "I used to think justice was loud," she said quietly. "Now I think it's persistent." He kissed the top of her head. "And unstoppable." Her phone buzzed, an alert from another country. Another case. Another arrest. She closed her eyes, breathing it in. The world hadn't changed overnight, but a crack had formed, and light was pouring through. The email arrived just before dawn. Zara saw the notification glow faintly on her phone, a single line of text previewed before she could stop herself from reading it. From Marcus Vale. She stared at the screen for a long moment, her thumb hovering. The room was quiet except for the slow rhythm of Han Jaiwan's breathing beside her. Outside, the city was still half asleep, lights blinking like distant stars. She opened it. The message was long, longer than she expected. There were no excuses this time. No sarpegis. No attempts at charm. He wrote about watching the trial from a holding cell. About seeing faces from his past replayed on screens he couldn't turn off. About realizing how carefully he'd rewritten his own story to survive himself. He said he was sorry for the abandonment, for the cruelty, for the child he never allowed himself to mourn. He said he had no right to ask forgiveness. He said he wasn't asking. "I just wanted you to know," the message ended, "that you didn't destroy me. I did. You survived me. And that's something I'll have to live with." Zara read it once, then again. When she finished, she felt nothing like she'd imagined she would years ago. No anger, no satisfaction, no ache, just distance. She locked the phone and set it face down on the nightstand. "Han yivon strid." "Bad dream?" he murmured. "No," she said softly. "Just an old ghost realizing it's already dead." He pulled her closer, and she let herself be held without explanation. Later that morning, the center buzzed with movement. Construction crews worked on the adjacent building, the sound of drills and voices echoing with promise instead of chaos. Volunteers sorted donations. Counselors prepared schedules. Children's laughter floated down the hall, light and unafraid. Zara walked through it all slowly, greeting people by name, listening more than she spoke. She paused at the doorway of the art room, where Mina sat with colored pencils spread around her, carefully filling in the wings of a bird. "Is it a phoenix?" Zara asked gently. Mina looked up, surprised, then nodded. "It keeps coming back." Zara smiled. "That's a good choice." At noon, the board gathered in the conference room. Papers were spread across the table, budgets, timelines, proposals for new locations. The numbers were big. Bigger than Zara had ever imagined when she'd first scribbled ideas on a borrowed notebook years ago. "We've received requests from 3 other cities," one board member said. "International inquiries, too." Zara exhaled slowly. "Then we grow carefully. We don't become what we're fighting." Heads nodded around the table. When the meeting ended, she lingered by the window, watching the city move. Han Jaiwan joined her, slipping a cup of tea into her hand. "You did this," he said quietly. She shook her head. "We did." He studied her face, the steadiness there, the softness that hadn't disappeared but had learned to protect itself. "Do you ever miss who you were before all of this?" Zara considered the question seriously. "I grieve her," she said, "but I don't miss her." She didn't know she was allowed to take up space. That evening, the center hosted a small gathering. Nothing formal, just food, music, warmth. Survivors sat together, sharing stories that no longer ended in whispers. Volunteers danced awkwardly with children. Someone played a guitar badly and unapologetically. Zara stood at the edge of it all, watching, heart full in a way that felt earned. Someone tapped a glass. A hush fell. Zara hadn't planned to speak, but she stepped forward anyway. "I won't take long," she said, her voice carrying easily. "This place exists because people refuse to look away, because someone somewhere decided survival wasn't enough." She looked around the room. "You don't owe the world your pain. You don't owe anyone forgiveness. But you owe yourself the chance to live loudly if you want to." Applause rose, Not thunderous, but deep. Honest. Later, when the night wound down and the last lights dimmed, Zara and Han Jaiwan walked home under a sky brushed with stars. "Do you ever worry?" he asked. "About how visible you've become?" She nodded. "Sometimes. But hiding didn't keep me safe. It just kept me small." They stopped at a crosswalk. The city hummed around them. "I used to think love was protection," Zara continued. "Now I think it's partnership." He smiled. "Good. I'm terrible at cages." At home, Zara placed the phoenix necklace on the dresser instead of wearing it. She didn't need the reminder anymore. She was living it. Before bed, she opened her laptop and drafted one final document. Not a press release. Not a statement. A policy. It outlined transparency, accountability, and survivor-led leadership. It ended with a simple line. "No one here is saved. We save ourselves. Together." She closed the laptop and turned off the light. In the darkness, she felt something settle. Not an ending, but a certainty. The past no longer chased her. The future waited, wide and unwritten, and Zara stepped into it without looking back. To enjoy more stories, kindly subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more intense stories like this.